I want to show you what Razer's already done in terms of, it's almost ready. It's a prototype, but I want to introduce, first of all, from our Singapore office, Chris Mitchell. And Chris is a project evangelist. So he is responsible for the controller that we're about to see. It's Razer's first tournament-grade controller. And we're going to, he's going to take us through all the text speeds and feeds and show us what it's all about. So it's a prototype again.
Okay, so as Robert just said, this is a tournament-grade controller. And just to give you a rough idea why this is tournament-grade as opposed to the original Microsoft controller, first thing you see is basically these rings underneath the analog sticks. And you can actually turn them down or up, dial them up and down just to adjust the tension on these sticks. So this one would be like really stiff, this one is really loose. So basically this is something that when we started on the concept of the Xbox controller, we talked to a lot of gamers, as we always do basically. So and what a lot of professional gamers, from especially in Halo, told us that when they buy a new controller, they actually borrow it out to their friends and they let them play for a couple of months until the tension on the controller gets like really loose. Because so the first thought for us was, okay, then we'll just give you a very loose controller. And then there were other people who are like, but I like a really stiff one. I like to play racing games. I don't like to oversteer too easily. So that was basically that's how the idea came about of actually doing a resistance adjustable tension on these sticks. So you can basically just adjust it to whatever preference you have. The second thing that we did is basically adding another button between the trigger and the shoulder button over here, and these multifunction buttons can be mapped through these switches to whatever button you want it to be. It's most helpful basically, or what we've seen it being used most with, is basically mapping them onto the trigger buttons. So like for example, if we're in, I don't want to restart this, but if you're in Halo, for example, and you can press this button to zoom. Okay, now I died. Too bad.
It's about how I am in this game, so it's all right.
So what you can do is basically just map it to this button and use the. Okay, now it's not. You put it to the left button, and then you can actually zoom it by pressing this button in the back, right? So that's a lot more convenient. For if you look at Borderlands, for example, you run by pressing down the button, but you have to press it down and walk around. So it's not really comfortable and not really ergonomic to use. And with the aiming, it's even worse. But you don't want to press the button because it affects your aiming in a negative way most of the time, right? So that's where these buttons really come in handy. Another two things that we basically took from our gaming mice is, for one thing, the finish. We use a non-slip rubber finish that we already used in our gaming mice, as I said, because they just give you a much better control of, or a better grip of your controller. While the second thing would be the hyper response button technology, which is basically just improved switches. It basically gives you a shorter travel distance on the buttons. Okay. You can actuate them faster, and they give you a better tactile feedback and an audible feedback when you actually actuate the button. So these are both two things that we already had in our gaming mice that are, like most people really love about our products. And the last thing that you don't see, because it's still a prototype, but we're working on the D-pad to improve the D-pad. Right. Because a lot of people have been complaining about it being not accurate and not precise, a bit too wobbly, right? So we're going more towards the direction of a 4 discrete button style, something along the lines of the PlayStation D-pad. Not exactly like the PlayStation one, but it goes in that direction. So you just have a better control of the D-pad. So that's something that you don't see here yet, but we're working on it, and we just want to get it perfect before we actually show it to anyone.
Well, now you said this is a prototype. I mean, how it looks like a very well put together prototype. How far along are you in the production process? Are we looking at later this year, earlier? What's the time frame?
Yeah, we're looking at a launch date for this on Q3 2010. It's a little bit difficult to plan for all this because additional to our own quality controls, we now got Microsoft approving everything we do in this. So yeah, we can't really tell, because at any point in time we could be like, okay, let's do something different, and like it could happen. But the Q3 should be a rather solid date on this one. Yeah.
Do you guys have a retail price kind of like in mind?
This is will be sold for $49.99.
$49.99. That's not bad. Have you guys considered a wireless version as well? I mean, I see this is wired.
Well, seeing as we're looking at tournament grade most of all, obviously the wired controller has a lower latency than the wireless controller. So for now, we're definitely only looking at the wired controller. And who knows what comes later along the line, but for now, definitely first on just the wired controller.